Hello, this is Thomas Smith, and today is September 8th, 2000. Today I'm reporting live at Galveston. We're going to have a 100-year special on the Galveston Hurricane of 1900. I went at 1900 to see the storm, and it was pure devastation. Now Galveston is a remarkable city. While I was interviewing people, one person shared me a story from her great-grandfather, Kyle. I'm going to share it to you once we get off. William was staring out of his house with a sad face. He just went swimming with his son, Kyle, and was trying to relax after a hard day at the medical college. While he stepped in the water, Kyle started swimming and left his dad's sight. William was so worried that he searched almost all of the water. The thing that he didn't know was that Kyle was swept by a current and hit his head on a rock. Kyle could not remember anything. After William told Julia, his wife, Thomas, his son, Anna, his daughter, and Anthony, his brother, the whole house went silent. They said their prayers and wept. How could William just let his son wander out with the dangers of the sea? Kyle was all right, though, just that he had forgot everything he knew. Poor Kyle was left to wander in a place that he no longer remembered. That night, Kyle had no food. The orphanage was the only place to go for him. When a nun found him, she immediately carried the poor boy in and gave him some food. When she asked him what his name was, Kyle could not respond. He had even forgotten his own name? When the nun asked him if he had a family, he shrugged. The nun told him that they were going to do everything possible to find his family. If only William knew that. He decided that tomorrow he would search every square inch of Galveston until he found Kyle. William never suspected that Kyle would be sleeping soundly in the orphanage. During the night, Kyle was starting to recollect some of his memories and knowledge. He remembered that he had been splashing and floating away. He remembered that he heard his name being shouted, but didn't know who. It sounded familiar. The next day, the nun told him some general facts about Galveston. Galveston had about 37,000 people living at the current time, she said. Galveston was like the New York of Texas. It had many of the first in Texas, such as the medical college and the bakery. Galveston was also a major port city. Many goods would be shipped to and from Galveston. Kyle wanted to see all these fascinating sights for himself. The nun allowed him to go, but told him to come before 8 p.m. Agreeingly, Kyle left. Kyle was fascinated to see what all new things had been laying for him. While he sprinted, he bumped into a man wearing a lab coat. He was talking to the rest of his family about finding someone. Kyle recognized a low voice, but couldn't get a clear grasp of who the man was. Kyle wanted to help the person who they were looking for, but Kyle just didn't have the time. He had to go back to the orphanage. But there were two things wrong. First of all, the sky turned black, foreshadowing a big storm. Second, he forgot the way back to the orphanage. He panicked and ran around in circles. He saw the same man and asked him a question. Excuse me, but can you tell me where the orphanage is? He asked. Just stay with us, the man replied. We feared that something was going to happen with the storm and that the orphanage was going to collapse. While eating dinner at the man's house, Kyle asked who they were looking for. The man shook his head sadly and told him that their son was lost. Kyle felt sorry for that man. Kyle was sleepy that night, so the man told him to sleep early. Kyle felt a similar presence. He felt that it was his room, but he thought he was dreaming. He went to sleep, but he had a nightmare. He thought that a 135-mile-per-hour hurricane would hit Galveston. He imagined it to be about 15.7 inches high. All those poor orphans who were still at the orphanage would just be swept away by a massive storm. But he imagined Galveston would recover. It would take about $20 million to repair Galveston. Between 6,000 and 8,000 people would die, though. The damage to the buildings would be around a $30 million loss. He would have to wake up tomorrow and find out the truth about himself and Galveston. The Galveston storm of 1900 left devastating marks on Galveston. The orphanage was like shredded up into pieces. All the people that died couldn't fit in the burial place. So people had to be sent out on rafts and they would come back. Then they would have to be burned on funeral pyres. Galveston has endured so many hurricanes before, but this one is the most severe. But Galveston's been recovering. They've built a seawall to protect from any other hurricanes that are going to come in the future. Hopefully that seawall will stop others, since all these hurricanes seem very harmful. So I think we should all take some time today and think about those who endured the Galveston hurricane. It was a real tragedy, and me and you wouldn't want to be in it, would we? See you next time on my radio channel. Bye.